So hi everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Katie Sando, and I founded the Marketing Forum a couple of years ago now. And basically what it's all about is if you're working in a small business or a medium-sized business, I personally had this experience as a consultant and in-house. It's very difficult to get access to knowledge. It's very difficult. We're often working in small teams. And so the Marketing Forum is basically a forum where we get to speak to amazing people like Subi and mine her for her knowledge so that we can learn from people who are in bigger businesses and other businesses and just think about things in a, in a bigger business mentality, maybe even if we're in a small business. So welcome if it's your first time. So the way that this normally works is Subi and I have a lovely chat, and then at the end, I open it up for a bit of a Q&A. So you're very welcome to ask questions throughout in the Q&A or in the chat. And what I probably do is come to them towards the end. So introducing the wonderful Subi Gnanaseharam. Subi is head of social for the Jamie Oliver Group. And thanks so much for joining us today, Subi, because it's, I think what's so great about the Jamie Oliver Group is obviously everybody knows Jamie Oliver. There's like I kept coming back to the fact that there's like 8 million people following him on. And then that started making me think. I would then start checking like what other big names maybe had followers wise. And he is absolutely up there with some of the highest, I mean, obviously he's not Beyonce, but
we're not Kardashian level yet. Not yet.
Kardashian. You never know, there's still time. So would you be able to start us off by giving us a bit of an intro to like how social for Jamie Oliver Group is set up? So plenty of people probably don't know what the structure of the group is like, and also maybe the structure of your team.
Yeah, so when I started out in social media at the Jamie Oliver Group, there wasn't a team. So I was in the online team actually, and all of the social media platforms were managed in that space, managed as in like we've got a presence, and then Jamie had access to, he ran his own platforms as well. And then as I kind of took over a bit more and had a bit more control and added a bit more strategy, or a strategy at all, it was a team of one for a long time, and I sat within the online team, and I actually probably one of the people that taught to most departments in the office, just because I needed the food team, I needed the art team, I needed to talk to PR, I needed to talk to book and media. Social media at that point, like it touches all parts of Jamie's business, so it was just me and everyone else. And then as we grew and YouTube actually became a massive part of the business strategy, we reshuffled a little bit, and actually the YouTube team had their own social media team. And then I found myself in between marketing online and the creative teams. And actually that's when the whole creative team had a restructure. And I fought quite hard for social to sit in the creative side of the business rather than the comms side of the business, because Jamie wanted it to be a space where actually it wasn't just marketing messages or any kind of like always kind of sales messages, but it was his space, and that was a creative space. So that's why I sat in the creative team, which I absolutely love. So now I have a team of 4, which hasn't been the easiest thing to get all that resource. I've had to kind of present a case every time I've wanted a new headcount, but I don't think that's abnormal in most businesses. But I think in a world where people still don't really understand the value of social and what it can bring to the table, it still needs that kind of level of, I need this role, I really do. It's not just a random request for another headcount. So yeah, I've got four in my team. I've got 2 social media managers, 1 community manager, and I've just recruited a more of a producer role as well, because we're doing more faster turnaround video content with Jamie too. So yeah, I don't know many other businesses where the social teams sit within the creative part of the business. So when I mean creative part of the business, it's called the Content Hub at Jamie. And within the Content Hub is the art team, the editorial team, the video team, and my team. And so we make up the Content Hub where everything that you see creatively from print to online digital content all comes out of that unit, unless we're working with an agency. But yeah, so it's different setup, but it's a good one.
It sounds super logical as well. I totally get what you mean, where sometimes people just use social channels, don't they, as like we're talking. And that's just not Jamie's style at all, is it?
No, I think it works for us because he had like the office was, we have the office space was built around the creative hub, and that is why it looks the way it does as well and functions the way it does. It doesn't mean that I don't work with marketing. I definitely have my objectives to hit for them, and Jamie's channels is seen as a way to market to our audience as well. So that is part of one of my objectives as well, that I grow an audience where it's engaged and useful, so we can sell to them, so they do know what new products and what new things Jamie's working on.
And in case people don't know within the group, so you've got, do you want to give us a run through of, because obviously you've got Jamie and his channels, but then there's way more to what goes on and what he gets involved in, isn't there?
Yeah, so it started off as just me looking after Jamie's channels, but that quickly expanded to looking after the restaurant group channels, which is now all international. So what I just work with the restaurant team now and the partners on the best use of their channels and how to use them. My team now also look after the cookery school, which is come inside into our office. So my team run all of that as well. We've just launched a kids cooking club called Cooking Buddies Club. So that's really started from people loving Buddies recipes, and actually it's expanded and becoming quite an integral part of our strategy for next year and how we widen to the kids audience. What else do we do? Cookery school, Jamie's channels, and I've got a few new projects coming up as well, which I don't know if I can talk about now, but a few more channels as well, which hopefully will kind of incorporate a bit more shopping, which Instagram obviously has gone big on this year.
Oh man, I stressed out when I logged in and I was like, where am I? Where is all the buttons gone?
I know, yeah.
Oh, never mind. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is content. So I think that content, when it comes to social media, I feel like social media content is one of the hardest parts of like marketing content to plan, just because there's so much visual. You want to also be slightly reactive at times. And so I really wanted to like pick your brains around how you guys do that.
So content planning is a bit of there is a plan, but I always call it a very flexible plan. And my team is probably the bit that my team hate about me the most, because I change stuff so many times. We always have a bit of at least like a week to 2 weeks rough content plan, which is almost like our bread and butter of our content. So what is it that our audience want? And they always just want to be continuously inspired by recipe content. So we're always looking at what recipe content we have. How do we plan that? What are people gonna, it's turning wintry in the UK. So do we get our soups and stews now, or what was the cinnamon buns were trending the other day? Do we have cinnamon buns? Should we get the food team to make some cinnamon buns? How can we create content, or what do we have to put into the calendars as well? But there is a plan. There has to be a plan. Otherwise it will be a mad scramble every day. And that looks like posts across the channels, which will be recipe content. Then we weave in marketing messaging if we need to market the book or Christmas or something that's happening at the cookery school, or Jamie's got a new project. As if anyone of you followed Jamie, you would have seen we launched yesterday. And then any other things on top of that, so any other campaigning messages or something happening in the news. But I think for anyone listening that works in social, you'll know how reactive you need to be, and actually scheduling content a month in advance is it's just not a good idea, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And we have to be agile, so if something happened all of a sudden, we have the flexibility to just switch all of our content off or on, or move it, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Right. It's so difficult because you don't want to be tone deaf, do you? Like if you've got something that you plan to put out, and then, you know, like you say, the world is changing so fast, you can get such a negative reaction on social from doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think everything, all of our content is, or it's never fixed. There's nothing that really like has to go out, and our partners actually also understand that, unless Jamie's going live somewhere or doing something. And we always stress to our partners, like, yeah, this is the time, like our commercial partners, sorry, that yeah, we'll roughly get it out around this time, but if that is subject to change, if I don't know, if something happens.
Tell me about how you literally do that planning then. So are you using like Excel spreadsheets, or are you using something more technical?
I think a lot of people use a lot of other different tools, but actually we actually do just use Excel. We've got and it's not anything fancy or crazy, but my senior social media manager, she's organized and she's amazing. So she actually, that's part of her role, to make sure that content is always structured and always has the content that we need for the week, and the number of posts without overwhelming our audience as well. And it's organized by platform, then by time, and then by content as well. And then it has a space where I write my my approvals and bits like that.
Cool. I've always found Excel the best as well. Yeah,
it is good. I haven't found anything, I guess because our content is such a quick turnaround, that there's brilliant scheduling and publishing tools out there that do the same work, but actually we've just found that this works for us right now. And I think until we get to a scale where it's unbearable, where Excel doesn't work for us, we probably won't change from Google, which our company forces us to use.
When you're talking to partners, so like TV or book or sponsorship or whatever it may be, how early are you guys involved in those conversations so that you can start shaping the content?
So if you asked me this question 8 years ago, I would have said when the TV aired, that's when I would get told. But now, nearly 9 years in, like we are brought in right at the beginning, and it is from concept stage. So this is the concept. How do we see it being activated across the channels? What do we need to collect when we're filming? Do we need to have someone down there to produce the content? This is the theme. What are the extension content behind the scene ideas that we could do? The book as well is, this is sort of the rough ideas. Do you think our audience would like it? Can we do a bit of digging in our audience to see if that theme would work? And Jamie's, it's not a secret, but Jamie has said a number of times that actually Quick and Easy came from his audience wanting it. He asked his audience and that's what they wanted, so that's what he gave him. That's what he gave them. So yeah, that's how we use the audience, and that's how we kind of can't remember what the original question is. Just went on a bit of a...
No, I was asking whether or not how early you're engaged in the process.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you answered that. But it's great though, isn't it? Because I just think that's what social's there for. It's that two-way, what do you want, and what can we give you?
Yeah.
And the other kind of question for me around the content is, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see you guys as doing loads of like campaigns, like social media kind of campaigns, maybe, where you're, you've got like particular hashtags or hooks over an extended period. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know you attach campaigns to products or launches.
Yeah.
So is there a reason why you don't do that? Do you not need to do that, or you don't find it effective?
I think we have moments where we have done that, and we do that, especially when we're talking about Jamie's campaigning moments, as in like stuff he's doing around childhood obesity. Then we will launch a big like hashtag moment where we want the audience behind us to kind of move that conversation through. And we've done that a few times. But most of the bigger campaigns, they do carry hashtags, but we don't use it as a way to kind of in a bigger way, which maybe that isn't the best thing to do, but we haven't had to kind of use that as the beginning of a campaign, if that makes sense. Like we're always leading with a book or TV, quite a bigger media channel to drive conversation, and hashtags and all of those parts of the campaign are intertwined, I guess, all the way through. Gravy Day actually is a new one. Love Gravy Day. If you love gravy, this is a good one for you. We started last year with Get Ahead Gravy, and actually that's a very hashtag driven campaign. It's got no kind of big media channels behind it apart from our own social media channels, and it's really driven by Jamie's audience's love for gravy and his brilliant Gravy Day recipe. And yeah, it actually came about because we saw so many people making it that we thought actually it needs a day, it needs a moment, it needs the power of the non-Jamie and Jamie audience loving this recipe.
When is Gravy Day?
12th of December.
This might be a stupid question, but when you say make ahead, you mean make ahead for Christmas?
Yes, so you can make this gravy and you can freeze it and then you defrost it on the day, and it's the best. Like once you make the gravy, you won't go back. It is the best gravy and the only gravy that you should have at Christmas.
I can just, like an ice cube tray or whatever, or I can just, nice. I'm going to look into that. The other kind of question for me around content. So I had said to you, you guys must never have issues where you don't have any content. And you were like, actually, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So when are those times when you're struggling with content?
Sorry, I just got distracted by the gravy comment. Thank you. Content. I think it might be, it depends how you come at putting content on social media. If you said to me, we have a database of images and there are thousands and millions. So technically, no, yes, I could never run out of content, but is that the best and is it the most relevant? Not all the time, like especially as channels are pivoting in different formats all the time. Sometimes I don't have content, and actually to get content for Instagram TV was a bit of a battle. It was like, oh, it's going to go away. Everyone will rotate their screen. No one will kind of need it. And I had to push quite hard for like formats to 9:16 actually. And then stories as well was another format. So it's not always a case where we've already got content. It's me getting new edits, filming in a different way. And then you've got TikTok and you've got Twitter, and it's all different forms of content. So if you ask me if I've got enough imagery, I've got loads, but that's the only thing I'll probably have forever, because Jamie has thousands, not thousands, he's 20 books, but they all have like thousands of recipes and images across the way. But yeah, it's just a different
your cinnamon buns. Did you manage to get the food team to make cinnamon buns?
We had a cinnamon bun recipe from the old magazine, so we pulled that out and used that, and we had a video as well by luck. But yeah, now that I have my own producer, I would probably just have commissioned her to create, using a recipe from the food team, create a bit of video content or something. Is it the icing moment, or is it like the tearing moment? It doesn't always have to be the full recipe.
Sure. So one of the things off the back of content I wanted to have a chat with you about is paid social. So as you were saying, it can be hard to justify investment in social, even in terms of headcount or content for especially small businesses. Then trying to say that actually you need a budget on top of that operationally. Is that something that you've experienced within the group?
Yeah, I have. And it's only now in the last couple of years where I've actually been given my own paid media budget to support organic content. And that's because the gravy
people are going on about the gravy.
It's so good. I hope this convinces you to make the gravy, because it is brilliant. It is brilliant. Yeah, so I've had to convince the business that actually now more than ever I do need a paid media budget to stretch the audience. So there's everyone knows that you never, we do have 8.4 million, but each piece of content doesn't reach all of that, all of those people. So I pitched an approach for a paid media campaign, or not campaign, but a paid media budget, and it was approved. It's not like your other companies that have thousands and thousands. It's a very modest budget that if I don't spend it, it kind of like goes that month as well. So I have to be completely on top of it as well, but also prove that I need it too. But yeah, no, like all businesses, I've had to ask, and I've had to give reasoning, and I've had to show what the kind of return is on that as well.
Where do you normally find, well, so how do you use that to maximize the budget?
So I go back to my core objectives, like what do I need to deliver for the business? For me, it's not, I don't need to deliver income. I need to deliver on Jamie having an engaged audience. So I've lost my words. My objective and what I look for in terms of goal is like how can this budget stretch that piece of content in and grow a more engaged audience. So I'll pick the content that is already performing really well and stretch it wider, or I'll run a campaign to around a specific moment where I know like will garner more engagement, or a piece of content that's performing well. But yeah, I don't know if that answered it very well. But
so do you and are you mainly, is there a particular channel where you find that you have to put it more than others?
No, I mean, I mostly use it on Facebook and Instagram, because there's Twitter's a bit of an odd one for us sometimes. We feel like sometimes you might be doing well, and then all of a sudden the trolls attack us left, right and centre. Pinterest as well I spend on too. It just depends on what is it that I'm trying to achieve with that budget, and I will probably hold more back around Christmas, because I know that we can stretch that content harder at Christmas, because I know it will surface better at certain points in the year.
People are looking, aren't they, anyway? So it's just like,
yeah, exactly.
Is that a real difference, you know, do you see a real difference when like Instagram and stuff change their algorithms, and you see a real
Yeah, you do. And we're not just because we've got a blue tick or we've got X amount of followers, it doesn't stop us from feeling the effects of that. So when the last wave of changes happened, it was like, okay, what is going on? Why is it decreased? What can we do? And it is a mindful every time they add reels and something else or the configuration has changed, because it does make changes to the platform, I think. And obviously the audience is just like, oh, my Instagram's changed, so what do I touch? What do I look at first? The behavior changes as well. And actually, COVID and lockdown obviously changed the way when people are online, and what times they're and all those kind of stuff in terms of engagement as well. And the biggest thing with Jamie is that he has a global audience as well. So that kind of like kicks you on that side as well, because your content needs to speak to everyone, really.
And you need to be working 24 hours to make sure the guys in Australia are getting in.
Sometimes, yeah, but not all the time, thankfully.
So one of the things I wanted to have a chat to you about, you mentioned Twitter trolls and PR situations when it comes to social media. I think is a real interesting one. I was having a chat. We have a Marketing Forum podcast, and there's one coming up next month. And I was chatting to a PR guy, we were talking about crisis, and saying that what happens now is that it just so fast. Any issue, it's like out of nowhere. I don't want to like focus on like really negative experiences, but have you had some of those instances, and how did you cope with them?
So we've definitely had a lot, not just a few, unfortunately. And I think we've learned from every one of them as well. And I think the business has also learned about how we deal with them every time. And actually, before, maybe in the beginning, it was me going, what do we do? It now is a bit of a process of I'm just not accountable for it. There's a chain where I go, actually, this is becoming a problem. We need to talk about it, or we need a reactive statement, or has it gone to press? What do we do? And then there's a process where at what point do we need to talk to Jamie and see how he feels or understands what's going on as well. So there's a much bigger process now, which is good. But then I think there's more of an understanding of like, actually there is such a it can snowball quite quickly, as you said, that actually if you don't have some kind of plan, then it can get quite out of control quite quickly, and all it does is for someone in PR maybe not to know what's going on, and then they release, I don't know, another story somewhere else, and then that it all impacts, or Jamie does something not knowing what's going on, and then it's like, oh, doesn't he not know what's going on? And it's making sure that actually at that point everyone that needs to know knows what's going on, so we can form a really tight plan and make sure Jamie's comfortable as well. And we've lived a few now, so I feel like we're quite you're never quite prepared which way it's going to go, I think. But yeah, I think it's one of those things you can't ignore, and actually just not feeling like you're alone and making sure you're going up the chain of command and making sure that everyone within the business that needs to know knows, then you can deal with it. If you're trying to deal with it on your own, then you don't get the full context. And I noticed that when I was on maternity leave, that you do when you're working, you get trapped into, oh my God, this is terrible. And then you speak to someone else, they're like, oh, I didn't even know, I didn't even see it, I don't even know what you're talking about. So it's actually talking to other people within the business, you get that perspective. Actually, it's not that big, it hasn't got that big yet. What can we do to either contain it, or let's just see how it plays out?
You guys you don't have rules where you think like, okay, we're always going to respond. You just play each one sort of on its own.
I think there is a structure of like, if it gets beyond a certain like level of conversation, then I need to move it up and alert people of what's happening, and also have a plan of like, do we need to respond, do we need to remove this, or do we need to, like, there are kind of things in place. But not everyone is like, if this happens then we put a statement out, if this happens we retract, or like I don't think it works for us. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is with stuff like Twitter as well, is like you can't keep up with all the comments anyway. So it's not as if you could respond to everyone and just be like...
Yeah, I think that doesn't help as well. I think what we found sometimes is that actually Jamie's the one with the dominant channel. So as soon as he responds, actually it's probably going to get more eyes on it than the other way around. So it's a matter of us figuring out, actually, if we need to correct something, we always do. But if there's nothing that we can add to the conversation that's going to change the narrative, sometimes it goes beyond the point of trying to convince anyone. You'll just get people going, well actually, then it's just like, there's nothing you're going to add to that that's going to make it any better.
No, and also half the people on there, they're not interested in a rational conversation. They're literally just like, you know, we'll leave that there before I use an outrageous word. One of the other things, you know, on the, like I say, I don't want to just be like negative about social media, like campaigns and stuff. So are there any like really great campaigns that you feel that for you over your period with the group are like stand out, where you're just like, actually that worked so well?
I should have something, shouldn't I, after like I think it's just all really changed and evolved every time. Like there's some stuff that I've thought, oh, actually that's done really well for Jamie. Like a lot of the campaign stuff, that's all been kind of created internally with the internal teams. Like our campaign to ban junk food on TV after 9 p.m, like that did really well, better than I had ever expected, how much of the audience actually were behind us in terms of shielding young people from ad content before the 9 p.m. watershed. So that was actually really good, and actually it had such a purpose that it was really good to see people get behind it too, and see this like swell of audience actually really getting behind it, including other campaigners too. Yeah. There's just really like little things, like when I first started, we did a one tweet pancake recipe, which was like retweeted, I don't know, like 20,000 times, and for me that was just like, oh my god, that's amazing. That's like nothing now, but it's just little wins like that, where actually you're using the platforms at its like best, in its best format, and it performs and it resonates really well with the audience. I think those have been like my favorite, not huge, massive campaigns, but just really successful content moments for me.
Do you guys try and shape what you think might constitute like a viral content, or is it more that yeah, good?
Not really, no. I think there's always a thought in your mind. It's about it being there's moments where we think, okay, how do we make this content shareable? And if you can make it shareable, then that's what makes it go viral, right? Everyone's talking about it, everyone's sharing it. It's not, we don't set out to make viral content. We just make good content that will engage with people too. And then Jamie does his own viral content. He'll just do something like, I don't know, grating a nutmeg on something unexpected, and that's the thing that will go viral. And he does all that, so I don't need to do that. He comes up with the cool food hacks that are our viral moments.
What's some? I think about like the pomegranate is one of the things I think with Jamie, where when he just was like bash and like
they all fall out.
Oh my god, I used to use like a toothpick to get those out. He's just like,
his little hacks, like we sometimes share a frozen chili hack. So if you freeze a whole chili, you can actually just use a fine grater and grate it over your food, or grate it over your fried eggs or something like that. And every time we share it, and we've shared it multiple times, it's just like a revolutionary tip that people just would never have thought of, which to be honest, I would never have thought of it either. But I would count that as like useful and brilliant content that we didn't even see the value of until we shared it with our audience.
Yeah. But you could have gone either way with that sort of thing, couldn't it?
Like who does that and why would you do it? But actually, because of food waste is such a massive conversation, it's actually brilliant. But actually, when I'm watching TV that's been filmed, I look for those moments of actually, what is the audience going to go, oh my god, that is going to change my life? And that's the bit that I'll lift from TV and make it a bigger moment across social, to either drive people to watch TV, or like to watch again, or to get that recipe.
Nice, cool.
That's not easy to spot, but
so channels is another one that I think it's really good to have a chat about. So you mentioned earlier about YouTube originally was, or like early on, was quite an integral part of the strategy, because you had I think you called it FoodTube, didn't you?
Yeah.
So is that still as important now? Have you found, so it's still like embedded?
Yeah, YouTube is still a really important channel for us. It brings in revenue from, so that's important, but we keep that audience. I don't look after YouTube. We have someone else in the wider video team that looks after YouTube. And I guess we launched on YouTube when YouTube was looking for original creators and building that space to be bigger than just random content, but actually substantial real content. So we were the food channel for them. And then after we finished working with YouTube, we just carried it on, because YouTube was like our space for evergreen video content. But what we found is that I guess because it's owned by Google, it's just run by search. So actually, it's just that it's our evergreen space where we keep going with like new content, but it doesn't need, we've got the massive library there that actually, if we didn't add to it, it would still keep delivering, because it's got great content on there.
Tell me about, so you use all the core channels at the moment?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and today TikTok.
Really? Did you do it today?
We did do it today.
Oh man.
Yes, or Jamie did, not me. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of channels actually. But actually, if you consider Instagram being a 3-part channel on its own as well, it's quite a lot of different streams of content that we're producing on, trying to keep going as well. So, and Instagram launched guides, so we're like, okay, so what does guides look like for Jamie? How can we use that as a useful space for Jamie? What can we do there? Instagram TV, I feel like, is a channel on its own. InFeed is a channel on its own. Stories is a channel on its own. Facebook, we have a few groups going where we like nurture our core audience in certain topics as well. So yeah, it's quite a lot actually, isn't it?
Yeah. And even like with Instagram, with like the reels, and I know that's been out for a while now, But
Yeah.
the way people are using that, you are having to create entirely new content. You can't just repurpose, can you?
Yeah, because and actually it's one of the things that I have to kind of reiterate when it comes to yearly budgets for content. It's like, actually I've got 3 more this year that I have to produce for, and in order to keep that channel going. And then it's for me to go, actually, well, how much content does Facebook need this year? How much does this need? And then it only takes Facebook to launch a new thing, and I'll need something else as well. So yeah, it's a lot, but we measure it by understanding the content churn as well. It's not every day we're doing content on every channel at a certain level.
Yeah, it's unsustainable, isn't it? You'd be like the biggest team in the business.
No, yeah.
Do you think about channels in terms of their audience as well, and actually create the content for those channels really specifically?
Yes and no. So our core pieces, which I would say is our recipe content, when I'm commissioning those recipes, it will be that actually our Facebook audience will really enjoy it, and so will our Instagram audience. It won't rub anyone the wrong way on both those channels, and YouTube too. And then it's looking at, actually, okay, so what versions do we need for those? Like, is the Instagram story the version just Jamie showing me the dish or spooning it up or pouring it or whatever the recipe is? And then and then carving it out like that as well. There are moments where we go, actually, this is just if Jamie's going to chat for 20 minutes, that feels like Facebook long form YouTube, where he just needs to get it out, everything he needs to say, or maybe it's an interview. So yeah, it depends on the content, but most of the time we try and make the content work, make those moments where we have Jamie work as hard as possible.
Pinterest. I'm always interested in Pinterest. How do you find that that's quite a good one for the international?
Yeah, like, so we've got a very big US audience, which isn't like, I feel like everyone has a very big US audience on Pinterest, because Pinterest is big in the US. I wouldn't say it's one of our, like, when I'm commissioning content, I go, okay, right, this is what we need for Pinterest. It's more of I feel like sometimes I treat Pinterest like our YouTube channel, where it's just like this library that keeps growing, it's growing. And when we have a good tactical moment, then I'll create content for Pinterest. But I know Christmas is just like, or like optimal moments, holiday moments or planning moments, or if, for example, if Jamie ever launched baby furniture, that is the first place I would put it, because that's where everyone would be looking. Or if he ever went into interiors and like his garden or anything like that, then I would definitely commission content for there as well. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because it used to produce loads of traffic for our website, and now it's dropped off quite a lot. So it's more one of that I just keep going, as opposed to like always create content for.
And I know when we chatted before that we were talking about the fact that these things come at you so fast, these new channels.
Yeah.
So TikTok for you, I guess that was probably a matter of you finding the time to do it more than it not being a useful channel.
No, so it actually came from Jamie, because he was in lockdown with his kids, and his kids were on TikTok, and they were talking to him about it. So we spoke about it and discussed what were the opportunities there, and he spent some time on the platform as well. So it's been a channel where we've carefully approached, and just I needed to better understand it before I could build a case for Jamie to kind of be there too. And also, it's not just like we can be there, we have to kind of think, actually, what does it take to be on there properly? And it would be so easy for me to go through my archive of video and go, just like, chop it to 916 and put it out. But I just don't think creatively that's the best approach for Jamie and for our brand. So I pushed back quite strongly with that, saying like, it needs Jamie, it needs his presence, unless we're going for like a food approach, which we haven't right now. So yeah, it actually came from him, and then I actually had to just really understand the platform, its nuances, its audience, and obviously it's all its data isn't out there like other platforms are right now. So I had to do a bit of digging, get connected with TikTok, talk to them, and all those kind of bits and pieces. And that was actually during lockdown. So that was like March, and we're only launching really now. And it's a bit of a staged approach as well. So we can really understand the audience too. But yeah, it's a really kind of, here's a new platform, right? What's the audience? Does it make sense for us? What's the point of him being there? Can we do something really cool and tactical there? Does it make sense? That kind of thing.
I think when TikTok first launched as well, obviously it was like it was kids, wasn't it? And you know, it's inevitable that that's going to evolve.
Yeah.
But that everybody at first was like, my audience isn't kids.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the battles were like everything that was in the press about TikTok as well. So it's like, actually, is it the right place for us? And for a brand point of view, is it safe? Is it this? Is it that? So my first piece was just like, actually, these are all lies. Here's all the truth. This is what TikTok is. This is what it does. This is all the things. No, it's not being banned from America. And this is why, if it was, all I had to go through that process, because our senior management team need to be sure that when we're putting Jamie into a space, actually he is safe and the brand is safe as well. So that comes with it too, but that wasn't too hard. That's kind of just the journalists do all the work for you. It's just like curating the right content and the right information. Yeah.
Due diligence. Tell us about how much you're doing on platforms and how much Jamie's doing, because he does quite a lot, doesn't he, on Instagram?
Yeah, and I think that's the way it probably should be. He has access to everything: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So it's quite funny if my phone goes off and I say, Jamie's gone live. It's like, have I gone live? No, Jamie has actually gone live. So yeah, he has access to everything. He sees everything. So he's the first one to tell me if he doesn't like anything, or if he doesn't, if he wants something changed, which is great. I think we've got to a point where he trusts me enough to kind of plan content, and I always kind of try and connect with him when there's kind of key pieces of content going out across the channels that are planned with him, with his understanding, but I do all the legwork because he just doesn't have the time. But like I said before, he's quite connected with his audience. He loves to see what people are saying. He loves to see how content is sitting with the audience as well. And it's even when TV goes out, that's the first, you can easily tell how the TV is going down by just looking across the channels and understanding what people are saying about it. So he loves it for all those reasons, I think.
It's what's key. It's why he's so good at staying relevant as well, isn't it? Because, you know, I even see him commenting on like chefs and stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, and that's all him. I don't fake being him. He is him. Facebook is more of a dual channel, so we have in the bios that it's Jamie and the team running it, so it's more of a team voice. But Instagram is all his, and he does everything. I don't do anything apart from organized content there.
Cool. It's an interesting one because in terms of like translating that into like a lot of other marketers, like most marketers and social media managers like don't have a Jamie. Yeah. So I guess what's interesting is, you know, how important do you think, I mean, obviously for Jamie and his brand, it's like integral. How important do you think it is to attach an individual voice sometimes to social media?
There's big discussion. Was it a couple of years or a couple of months ago? I can't remember. God, it's been, yeah, I think tone of voice is important, definitely. I think social media was always a place where you could talk to your customers, your consumers. So actually having not a robotic voice, but actually a conversational one makes sense to me. And actually having the Cookery School channels, which is a brand and not a Jamie voice, and having Jamie's channels, we do both approaches. Like it's still a conversational Jamie tone of voice, like our brand tone of voice, but it isn't his voice, and Jamie's voice is Jamie's voice. But yeah, it's not a customer service approach that sounds awful, doesn't it? Customer service, but it's not like we don't have a formal approach to social media. It's quite conversational, even in our customer service responses. And I feel like that's a good approach, and that's working for us as well. I think people come to social to have conversations, moan and do everything. They feel like they're talking to a brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you as well about setting goals and stuff. So you have those that you, so you, I mean, you've already talked about it a little bit. So you talked about the fact that marketing will kind of give you some objectives, and you've got sort of business objectives to reach. Do you then sort of in your own team think about what kind of you want? Do you have kind of objectives that you guys set yourselves?
Yeah, I do. I set my team objectives, and they're more creative objectives than functional ones. What have I done functional ones? I don't know. There's a few functional ones, but at the moment I'm pushing my team more creatively. So I'll have more creative objectives, not to make content go viral, but actually like be on top of trending content, and like whenever there is an opportunity, like bringing ideas to the table. And doesn't mean that all those ideas will happen. It means that actually we're trying to be relevant. We're trying to create content that is reactive, which is perfect for social media, isn't it? It's not like we don't want to have this churn of like, here's soup, here's toast, here's this, here's that. We want to be able to say like, there's something happening here, or this is happening. It's like become ridiculously hot. Like, what content are we bringing to the table as well, like in its simplest form as well? So the objectives and goals kind of work along that side as well, and also connect back to our wider business goals. What are we doing to contribute to those wider business goals? How can we use those channels to support or like do what the business needs us to do as well? If it is sell books, well, how can we do that in the best creative way that makes use of our platforms, rather than just going, here's the book cover, buy the book type content?
Yeah,
which we do as well.
Sure, but like you said, people don't go to those channels to be sold to like the whole time, do they? It's like the first thing you unfollow is anything where you're just like, boring. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. If anyone has any questions, if you want to start chucking them in the Q&A, that would be wonderful. What I wanted to know is, what do you think makes a really good social media manager or head of social? So for me, I think people who work in social, you have to be so smart, and you have to be so like almost like confident, I guess, in a way, because you know, when you see on Twitter where like the supermarkets the other day and they all started having a conversation, you know, you have to be confident enough to be like, okay, I'm going to engage in that because it's a good opportunity and actually it's going to do something. So you know, that's where I think like there's this kind of confidence and this like intelligence around it. What about for you? Do you feel is there a particular kind of, I don't know, trait that you think people have that do it really well?
Gosh, I think all of my team are really different, actually. They all bring something really different to the team, because without the structure of someone being organized, then there's not this consistent flow of content that is thought about in a strategic way. But then without someone being quite confident, going like, actually, eggs are trending, I'm going to switch this for that, you need that as well. Also, when you're working, I guess, for Jamie, you need to be confident in your knowledge of what's happening in the industry wider and what products are going to work for us. And also, if he doesn't know what it is, we have to be able to go, actually, this is going to work really well for us. And if we create this content like this, then it's going to perform really well. So having that confidence in each of the kind of platforms and how they work and what they could achieve for us is quite important. And being agile, I think, is the biggest thing that I think you can have, or is agile the right word? I think so. Yeah, agile. Because if you looked at my role 8 years ago to what it is now, it's completely different. So I've had to flex every time there's a new product or a new platform or a new thing. And I think if you're not used to kind of going, actually, tomorrow there's a new thing, and actually, how do I pivot my content to fit that? It's just it can get away from you quite quickly, and then if you're last, then you're slow, really, and there's no kind of point doing it.
I think even like marketers in general, like if you can't be agile, then you can't respond to trends, and you know, you can't just be like, oh well, my strategy says this, so irrespective of what's happening in the world, I'm going to pursue. You know, you do really have to be able to just like respond.
And I think when you've built a decent size audience, it can be really easy to get stuck in the rut and go, actually, I know that this works, so I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to ignore the other stuff that's happening. And actually, I think that's quite dangerous, because you can become old news quite quickly. So you just have to move with how the platforms move as well.
as much as that can be frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to say I like every update because I don't. It's more work for me.
I know it, but it is though, isn't it? And I just, when I like looked on Instagram, my heart sank and I was like, no, I can't even find where my likes are.
Yeah.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee. So I manage a marketing team that sells quite complex niche services. Would you have any tips on how to be creative with technical content? That is a very good question, anonymous attendee.
Technical content. I just hard to know without knowing exactly what the technical content is. But actually, I don't know if this is a very good example or not. But I follow a few really cool estate agents on TikTok, and I think actually they used that channel in a way that I've never expected it to be used, in a really creative way. And it's just thinking a little bit outside of the boxes of what is that unique part of your business and what's your audience and how can you tap into that, whatever it is. It's quite hard to know without knowing what it is. But let me give you an example so my husband is an acoustic consultant, very boring, but slightly interesting as well. But he works with, oh God, I hope there's no other acoustic consultants on here. He works with sound a lot. So I was talking to him, obviously I have to give him free advice. What can they do? What do they, how can they pivot and what channels can they use? And actually, if they're working in sound all the time, they should use that to their benefit. So can they, using tracks, or actually podcasting is great because it's such a geeky subject that I'm sure there's lots of people out there that just want to know what is that weird Latin name and what does it mean, or like what are the things that are a basic, if you were looking for acoustic paneling in your house because you can hear upstairs and you don't want to hear upstairs, like what are the things that you can kind of make funny, or what memes are out there that actually you can play on, or it's having a look at bits like that. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult. I think I do quite a lot of work in B2B, and even in B2B it's the same thing. Like, you know, how do you put out something that, and if you're not trying to sound salesy, and often I think it's not getting trapped in this sense of needing to be on all the channels in those kinds of so if your audience is just on LinkedIn and whatever, then, you know, we don't need to be on Pinterest. But
yeah, no, exactly. I think that's it. I think people, a lot of that, when Jamie does send people to me that he wants to kind of impart some advice on, that's the first thing I always tell them. Like, if you can't do all the channels, pick the ones that are going to work the hardest for you, and then look at your content you have to play with, and then frequency as well, and consistency, and start from there. Like, don't try and be on every channel, because if you're not able to like put the amount of content needed out, there's no point having all of them. You can build it up slowly as well.
Loads of questions. Oh my God, I don't know what to ask. So Jeremy Mitchell, hi Jeremy. He says, what social media trends and innovations are you seeing, or do you expect to see next year, 2021?
Shopping, I think, is really interesting, and the bit that I can't get my teeth into, because Jamie has a profile that is a person, sorry, not as a business. But we hopefully have a few more things kicking off next year that will help us test that a bit more. But I think using those platforms where people are on all the time and making them shoppable is really interesting. And we've been talking to a few technology companies that actually make video content shoppable as well. And that's also an interesting approach, something that I don't think people are quite ready for, but definitely interesting. And then how you can I guess podcasting is not really seen as a social media platform, and doesn't sit within my team, but it is interesting that's that kind of that bridge between the both as well. And yeah, short form video is back in a big way. So we went from like long TV to short YouTube, which is still long, and then we're going like shorter again. So I think that short video is also quite interesting, again, like short video, 15 seconds.
Oh God, we're literally going to end up as like a society with
thinking.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, oh. Frances Adam, she says, what are your key metrics for social and how frequently do you share reports with the business? I feel like you probably answered the first one a bit, but how are you reporting on those key metrics?
Yeah, so it's a bit, so the wider marketing team look at the bigger numbers which they're interested in, which is like scale of our audience, how big are they in certain countries and territories, and they look at it from a point of, okay, right, if we have to market to those territories, how useful are those channels? So they look at those numbers which they have access to, and then I look at it from a content point of view. So how hard is each piece of content working for me daily, weekly, and then monthly? What does that look like in terms of reach and engagement? I think engagement for me is my golden number. If my audience isn't engaged with me, I feel like the content isn't performing very well. For like, I think about at least 60% of our content is like engagement led, as opposed to like it just needs to reach X amount of people, which we do have content. We create content for that as well. But my key goal is definitely engagement. How many people are talking to us? How many people are sharing this piece of content, and how are they engaging? And that will be different on different channels as well. So that those engagement metrics will look different for stories than it does for Facebook as well. So, and I make that really clear to my line manager, that it is like, these are these metrics because it's this channel or this kind of stream of content. And it's there. And it's a lot of numbers I'm tracking, which is a bit painful when you don't have someone doing it for you. But when you're asking for money to create content, you have to prove it.
Yeah, let's do the counting. Who do you actually line manage? Who is your line manager? I'm just interested in terms of, do you report into marketing?
No, I report into the chief content officer. And she's a senior manager. Then there's a senior management team.
Cool. Another question for you, does the tone of voice and copy change per channel? For example, is it informative on Facebook and then more chatty on the gram, or is the copy the same throughout?
No, it's different. So it's Jamie's first person on Instagram, so he sees everything. So it's first person and it's his channel. And then Facebook is more like team brand Jamie. So we don't use I or me unless it's a project he really wants to use I and me. So it normally depends on what the content is. But yeah, it's always chatty. It's always brand Jamie, which is his tone is what you hear on TV. So that's what we adopt across all the channels as well.
Cool. We've got time for one last question if anyone wants to chuck one in. If not, I do have another question for you. I wanted to know, in terms of other brands, who do you think does their social? Who do you follow that you think, yeah, they do that really well?
Oh gosh, there's loads actually. I love what ASOS do. I love what it's going to be all these food, all really like indulgent food brands coming your way now. Jude's ice cream does really good work. I love what they do on their channels. Who else do I like? I actually like a lot of people. I'm just trying to think of brands that I really there's a few media agents, like Netflix obviously does very well. HBO Max does. I think there's a few channels that they have taken a really cool creative approach actually, and the color like lining up on the grid and everything is very satisfying and I love it. Who else do I like? Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, there's a whole bunch. I think brands do some campaigns really well as well. I love what KFC do as well. Probably shouldn't say I like KFC, but I do like KFC. Yeah, I think all those brands that are, like you said, free enough to have a conversation and be funny and actually attract the audience in that way is quite cool too. I really like that. I actually really like I'm a Celebrity and Great British Bake Off on Twitter, and I just love the way that they accentuate the audience and accentuate the conversation and extend it further as well, and draw in a real audience too. I like that. I like what they do. Is it Washington Post or HuffPost on TikTok is amazing. They're so good and very funny.
I feel like you're saying like Great British Bake Off and stuff. It's similar to what you were saying in the sense of it's the content that is already being filmed and everything, but it's then they cut it down, don't they? So you've literally got that like hilarious snippet or like the oh moment or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, those predicting what is the moment that is. And it's really hard because we worked with an agency actually with Jamie for one of his TV shows, and actually they have to go through the whole TV show and pull out the bits where they can make a bigger conversation out of what's happening. And now I've got someone in my team that actually does that, and that's their job, like look through it, see what are the questions that are going to come out from the audience, and what can I make a bigger moment across social using TV.
It was so funny because before we started chatting, we were saying that we were going to end up in the dark by the time, like, because of the time of year. And I was just like, that's exactly what's happened. I am not going to keep you any longer. You have been so generous. Thank you so much for letting us pick your brains. And I know that people have found that incredibly useful. Thank you everyone for your questions as well, and for chatting. Thank you, Subi. You're an absolute star. We are so glad to have had you on the Marketing Forum.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.